Hi, how are you doing? My name is Rohit and I'll be breaking down the 17th match of this year's IPL, which saw the Gujarat Titans taking on the Punjab Kings in the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. And it was a back and forth affair, and we haven't had a lot of those this season, but the Punjab Kings came out on top with 3 wickets to spare and 1 ball remaining, and they won. So let's kind of get into what happened. And in the first innings, it was the Shubman Gill show who batted through the entire innings, 89 not out, and he anchored the innings, got Gujarat to 199. So, but the problem is, it kind of just stops there. Kane Williamson comes in at number 3 because David Miller's out with injury for the Titans for the next week or so. So, to kind of get some sort of batting in, they bring in Kane Williamson, which then pushes Sai Sudarshan down to number 4 outside of his normal number 3 spot. So what this creates is, to kind of compensate for the batting that they're going to miss without Miller, they try to load their top order up in hopes that the top order gets the job done so they don't have to worry about some back-end hitting. Because when you think about it, you have Azmatullah Omarze, Rahul Tewatia, Rashid Khan. And of those 3, yes, all 3 of them are very capable, but Rahul Tewatia is the only one who's a bit of a proper established finisher who's a lot more consistent compared to Rashid Khan and then Azmatullah Omarze, the latter of whom is still relatively unproven. We know he has the ability. He just hasn't had a consistent opportunity to show it. So with that in mind, losing the experience of David Miller at the back end for that back end hitting really hampers Gujarat. So they brought in Kane Williamson, 26 from 22, so not bad. And then you have Sai Sudarshan at number 3, 33 from 19. He actually excelled in that role, kind of being sort of an enforcer and taking on the bowlers. And Shubman Gill did well to rotate the strike to him to let him continue. And then once Gill got out, then Gill just, not Gill, I'm sorry. Once Sudarshan got out, then Gill decides to take the strike for himself and takes more of the onus on himself to accelerate the run rate, and he did so well. But because of Williamson coming in before Sudarshan, and the fact that they don't have that too much of an established back in hitting, you kind of dig yourself into a hole that you don't really know how to dig yourself out of. Because yes, Shubman Gill played well today. Yes, Rahul Tewatia brought that finishing that he always does. And yes, Sai Sudarshan played a capable innings. But what if the top order does not give Gujarat the start that they did? What if you have to rely on your middle order and lower middle order to consolidate the innings and accelerate? Just because it didn't happen today doesn't mean it can't happen over the next 2 weeks. And keep in mind that the league stage for this is roughly 6 to 7 weeks. And you're losing one of your best players, one of your most important players, for 2 of those weeks. And when your solution to that is to bring in another top order batter to kind of shake up an already established top order to kind of hedge the fact that you don't necessarily have the most consistent back in hitting, that's a roster construction issue. And that's something that Gujarat have to address very quickly, so that either you accept the fact that your overall batting output is going to be a little lower, and then maybe use your impact sub to bolster the bowling. For example, if they bat first like they did today, they could probably roll with 3 foreign players and then maybe bring in someone like Josh Little or some other overseas bowler to bolster their bowling when they start chasing. Or when they actually do when they do bowl, maybe they do the same thing except in reverse, and then maybe bring in another foreign batter to bolster the batting. But it has to be someone who can be capable at the back end, because in my opinion, the top 3 in any format, in any league, you should not mess with that. If I'm the Gujarat Titans, Wikraman Saha, Shubman Gill, Sai Sudarshan, that's my top 3. I do not want to mess with that. You mess with it, you may have days where messing with it can cost you 10 to 15 runs, or if not more. And personally, I felt like Gujarat was 10 to 15 runs short. That's what it felt like watching the way they batted. And ultimately, you could say that if they didn't concede the extras, then it wouldn't have mattered. But here's the thing. Gujarat did bowl well. They kept taking wickets at regular intervals when Punjab was chasing this total, this 10 runs per over total. And they were taking wickets at regular intervals. So it's not like they did anything wrong with the bowling. Their bowling was actually very solid. But what Punjab did that a lot of teams don't do in chases like this is that even if they lost wickets, they didn't let the scoring rate get out of hand. They always stayed around that 8 to 10 run range. And even when the asking rate got to upwards of 13, they didn't panic. They kept a level head, and Shashank Singh and Ashutosh Sharma both excelled for Punjab to basically really get that scoring rate up and over what they needed to make sure that they got over the line. And they got over the line today because of that sort of back-end presence of just making sure that the asking rate did not get out of hand. Because in this type of chase, you get up to an asking rate around 15, 16, you kind of have some trouble outside the back three. Because if you have 15, 16 in the back three, that's sort of anyone's game. You get a few big hits in here and there, get that down to 13, 14, you're in the driver's seat. But if you need to be around 15, 16 for 6 to 7 consecutive overs, that is a struggle spot. Shashank Singh and Ashutosh Sharma made sure that Punjab was never in that sort of struggle spot. And that's how they ended up winning. Everybody in this team contributed relatively significantly, which also helped mitigate the fact that they kept losing wickets regularly. And honestly, if they didn't lose those wickets regularly, it probably could have been a much easier chase, and we probably would have seen that Gujarat was 10 to 15 runs short. For Gujarat, yes, their bowling was good. Could it have been better? Probably, but here's the thing. When you take 7 wickets, that means you're doing something right. And it's unfair to really blame the bowling for this, because Punjab also did well to not let the scoring rate get out of hand. So this was a very even contest. What ultimately did end up sinking Gujarat was, one, kind of messing with the batting order, because let's say Sai Sudarshan comes ahead of Kane Williamson and gets a few more balls in. Because Kane Williamson faced 22 and only scored 26. Sai Sudarshan faced 19 but scored 33. That's a significant difference in scoring rate between those two players. Yes, the situations were different, but even in this IPL and as well as last IPL, Sai Sudarshan has showed the ability to not only be able to consolidate an innings, but accelerate when the time calls for it. And with Shubman Gill ready and capable of rotating the strike and letting the batsman who's more free-flowing keep going, that would have been a much more impactful partnership, because Sudarshan probably gets more runs if he gets a bit of a longer stay at the crease. At least that's what it looks like in terms of game flow. Obviously, we don't know what would have happened because a lot of these are just hypothetical conversations, but this is just based on recent form and general game flow. And for Punjab, it's just they took that game flow and made it their own in a different way. Everybody contributing, everybody scoring at a relatively quick rate to make sure the asking rate didn't get out of hand, to make sure that they were keeping up. And it's because that they kept up, they won. They could easily let this get out of hand once they started losing a bit more wickets. But they didn't. They kept their calm. They didn't panic. They ended up winning. And so if you're both teams, where do you go from here? Well, if you're Punjab, ideally you don't have this sort of situation again where you keep losing wickets. But if you do, at least play positively, like how Shashank Singh and Ashutosh Sharma did today. Play positively to make sure that your scoring rate doesn't dip too low to where you're putting unnecessary pressure on yourself when you could have avoided that. And if you're Gujarat, you have to take a serious look at how much losing David Miller affects the balance of the team. Because losing one player should not have this much of an impact on the team balance to the point where you have to compensate back end hitting with loading the top order. In a perfect world, you would have to find a one-to-one replacement. And obviously, David Miller is one of one. He's one of the best finishers of the past decade. You're not going to be able to replace that easily. I'm not saying you're going to be able to find a one-for-one. But there's no way you don't have someone in that lineup, in that squad, that you can point and say, hey, he's not David Miller. Nobody's going to be David Miller. But we have a guy that we can believe in, that we can say, hey, go get us some back-end impetus. There has to be someone like that. And again, if you find someone like that, preferably an Indian, so you don't have to use up a foreign slot that you can instead use as an impact sub. And obviously that can work in reverse as well. If you're bowling, maybe find another Indian bowler to help bolster the bowling attack to give you another bowling option. If it's a turner, bring in someone like Sai Kishore. If you have a seaming pitch, then find a seaming bowler who's Indian. So again, you only use up 3 of those 4 foreign slots, and then you can use the 4th as an impact sub. That's what the impact sub allows you to do. It allows you to, well, to its name, bring in a player who can make an impact, but it also allows you to play around the 4 foreign slot limit, because you can bring 3 and then bring in a 4th. That's what a lot of teams do. So they bring in only 3 foreign slots in their base lineup, but they add in a 4th as an impact sub. So that's something that Gujarat has to explore, at least for these next 2 weeks until Miller gets back, and I wish him a speedy recovery, obviously. But Gujarat has to look at that, because you can't have another day like today where you ultimately end up being 10 to 15 runs short because your top order outside of Shubman Gill did not fire as they should have. Widiman Saha goes out cheaply. Williamson takes up a few more balls than he should have, and he didn't necessarily get as good as a return. Instead, that type of innings could have been better suited for someone like Sai Sudarshan, who probably should have came in at his standard number 3 slot and then does what he does. You need that sort of stability, that sort of, I'm going to do the dirty work, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty sort of mentality. And Sai Sudarshan has that. And Gujarat should use that to their advantage. So ultimately, there is some sort of roster construction, some team balancing issues that Gujarat have to think about for the next 2 weeks. And if you're Punjab, it's just, can you start stacking wins? Because right now, you're not necessarily in the best of positions, but getting these 2 points today really helps. And maybe that can turn into some momentum. The IPL is a strange tournament. We've seen very strange things happen. So with that, that's all I've got. I'll be back for the next one. And as usual, please like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, thank you. Have a good one.